Continuing our coverage of a story that just won't go away, this is yesterday's news about Indian Special Forces crossing over into Pakistan over the line of control, attacking 7 different terrorist installations, perhaps as many as 8, destroying them, killing dozens of terrorists. The casualties may actually be over 100, and then returning safely to Indian soil with no Indian soldiers killed. Now, what's been interesting is that for years, India was deservedly criticized for failing to act and retaliate against Pakistan, as it would send countless militants across the border to attack and murder Indians and kill innocent people. That's what terrorists do. As Daily World has explained over and over and over, because it's true, the definition of terrorism is the deliberate systematic targeting of innocent people for the purposes of social or political change. That is the universal definition of terrorism. So the la-la left-wing liberal myth that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter never has been true. And it especially has been a cynical falsehood since the terrorist attacks of 9/11 and the United Nations finally agreed on the single definition of what terrorism is. So don't be fooled by people who claim that terrorists are freedom fighters. They're not. They're terrorists. Now, getting back to the raid by India, which was successful, what has happened is wholly predictable. India, in a very prudent move, has evacuated some 1,000 villages near the Pakistan border as a protective move until further notice. A lot of people have been displaced and they are being put in tent cities. The Pakistan military has suddenly decided that it needs to go on maneuvers. They have to show and puff up their chest. And the Pakistani government continues to talk out of both sides of its mouth. And they're denying, of course, which is predictable and it's a lie, that there was any incursion by Indian special forces at all. In fact, some reports coming out of Pakistan falsely claim that 6 Indian soldiers were killed. Yeah, right. Well, I guess we never went to the moon either in 1969. There was another gunman on the grassy knoll who killed Kennedy. The Titanic was actually not sunk by an iceberg. It was instead sunk by an alien spacecraft, and aliens abducted all the people. I mean, name your conspiracy, that's nonsense. Bermuda Triangle, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, they're all not true. And now you can add Pakistan's lies to that mix. We can say that because Pakistan lies all the time. This is a country that makes a point to support Islamic, radical, fundamentalist or foundamentalist terrorism. Pakistan has thousands of mosques and madrasas throughout its country, largely paid for by Saudi Wahhabia, also known as Saudi Arabia, to spread hatred and raise generations of suicide bombers. The Pakistanis have been, for years, for decades, one of the early backers of the Taliban, who rose to power along with Al-Qaeda when President Bill Clinton was in office in the 1990s. Now, Pakistan, for years, decades actually, has sent militants across India to kill Indians. Pakistan does this because too much of its government and society are driven by hatred and intolerant ideology known as radical Islam. This is a historic fact. Now, what has happened this time is Pakistan is simply saying this was just a bunch of artillery fire or another day at the line of control, and that's pure nonsense. Instead, Indian Special Forces crossed over into Pakistan, took out 7, perhaps as much as 8 different camps, killed dozens of terrorists. No Indian commandos were killed at all. They're all accounted for. And to believe the nonsense and bull crap coming out of Pakistan, let's call it bullschlacken because that's what it is, you would have to believe that the entire civilized world is involved in this imaginary conspiracy. This means that the United States is siding with India and making up the fact that it not only helped in the raid and has condoned it, was supportive of it. Israel also helped. The EU also backs the raid that India did. So does even Afghanistan and other countries. Put another way, Pakistan is becoming increasingly isolated, not because everybody's picking on poor Pakistan, but because Pakistan deserves to be isolated and actually penalized severely economically, politically, and militarily, since it continues to support terrorism, which is not acceptable. Now, apologists for Pakistan and people who just don't understand the real nature of India's character have said that, well, we can't, punish Pakistan because China will come to the rescue and China might declare war on India. That's not going to happen. Communist China, as screwed up as they are, and as much as they don't value human rights and never have, communists never value human rights, they're not going to sit there and embrace terrorism. They can't afford to be seen doing that. It would hurt them where the communist Chinese care the most, which is in their wallets. Russia, which is not happy with India's turn to the West and the fact that Israel and the United States are now India's two largest weapon suppliers, they're not going to embrace terrorism either because they're, for one, too busy in Syria spanking Barack Obama, showing him how to fight a real war over there. And of course, they are standing on the verge of victory where Assad's troops, that is Bashar Assad, the dictator of Syria, is about to recapture the rebel-held city of Aleppo. Barack Obama is not going to save these people. He and Hillary Clinton were wrong for messing in the affairs of Syria in the first place and trying to force regime change when, like George Bush, they had no post-war plan. In fact, they didn't even seem to have a plan to fight a real war at all in Syria. The world is not going to hold Barack Obama accountable, though, for his debacle in Syria because Obama's proponents might say you're being a racist, and of course Hillary Clinton might dismiss this as part of a vast right-wing conspiracy, or maybe you're a deplorable, or maybe it's an alt-right conspiracy. Name your excuse, Clinton is full of them, so is Obama. The bottom line is that messing in Syria was a reckless and stupid thing to do. It has gotten hundreds of thousands of people murdered, and Obama and Clinton bear this criminal legacy. Now, getting back to India, as we sort through the data and the reactions to this on social media, which is always a barometer of how people feel, right or wrong, true or false, you have many Pakistanis and Arabs claiming, oh, this isn't true, woe is Pakistan, this is an Indian conspiracy, Indians are just making this up, the whole world's against them. This is a bunch of nonsense, bullschlacken and hooey. I issue you this challenge for those who are stupid enough to believe and gullible enough to believe that the Pakistani government is actually telling the truth and that there was no special forces operation that was successful that killed dozens of terrorists, including at least 6 Pakistani military personnel. The Pakistani government has confirmed the loss of only 2 of them, of course. Now here's the challenge. If you can provide any evidence at all that is credible, can be independently verified by anyone wishing to do so, which is what happens when you stick to facts rather than fiction, I promise you that as a officially accredited investigative journalist, I've been that for dozens of years internationally, I will personally champion that data and expose it as being true and lay this whole conspiracy thing to rest and prove that India is lying and the US is conspiring and Israel is conspiring and the EU is conspiring and Afghanistan is conspiring, etc., etc., etc. On the other hand, if you don't produce the proof, being as we are willing here at Daily World TV to post the evidence that proves Pakistan is telling the truth, then you must agree to hopefully get a clue, get a life, and move on and just admit that you're wrong. One of the biggest problems with people in general is their egos prevent them from admitting the truth. Just ask Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. They're 2 great examples. Do you need any more?